what's going on, guys? Pete here with MixBetterNow.com, coming to you with the new Mix Critique Monday, but I'm shooting this on a Tuesday, so I do want to apologize for that. It's currently Tuesday, the 23rd of May, but this video is for the 22nd of May. Wanted to say sorry again, and again, last week I was just really not in the studio a lot. Was really slacking on my emails, on my content creation. Long story short, my 15-year-old dog, she's been sick for, I would say, the last year. It's been pretty bad. Things really ramped up and escalated the past week, and we wound up having to put her to sleep yesterday. And that was one of the hardest days of my life, for sure. So needless to say, yesterday I just couldn't get on here and do this. And I've been taking care of her pretty aggressively the last week. She's gone downhill. She was battling with like lymphoma for the past year and stuff like that. She had a really good run. 14 and a half years old. She would have been 15 in November. So yeah, that was a tough one yesterday. But anyway, just that was the reason I didn't get this up. And again, for last week being a little MIA. Anyway, I want to start getting all sad again. So this week we got 4 mixes on deck. This week we have mixes from Antonio Mosqueda, Paul Perkes, Liam Hamer, and Hope. Okay. 4 cool tracks. One is actually a revision that Liam had submitted, a song called It Burns. He had done, so he kind of took some of the suggestions that I gave and brought them on board for this mix revision, so I'm excited to hear it. Okay, for those of you who are new to Mix Critique Monday, I just want to say welcome. What it is it's a platform for you to get a free mix critique. The concept is very simple. Everything that I say on here, I'm just giving back lots of positive, constructive criticism, some things that I hear, basically getting another set of ears on your mix, and figuring out ways to improve it, to make it better, to maybe point out some things that I'm hearing that you're not. I totally know what it's like to be buried in a project and working on it, and it's sometimes hard to get perspective. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I do this. I just want to reiterate that nothing I say is negative or malicious. The criticism that I have is always positive and it's always constructive. So, I never say anything, in a bad way. I don't have any time for negativity in my life, and I hope you guys don't either, right? We're all too busy making music and doing that. So, all you have to do if you want to jump on here for a mix critique is you just email me, okay? Pete@mixbetternow.com. Please send me a WAV file, guys, okay? WAV files, I feel like sound a lot better than MP3s. WAV file to in the show notes below. You could just click on the description box, and I have the instructions in there if you forget. But shoot me an email with your name, the name of the mix, okay, the name of the band if it's different from yours, and again, just please send me a downloadable WAV file. And it's really as easy as that. First come, first serve. I put them in line when I get them, and I download them, okay? So we're going to start off here with a mix from Hope. This is the song Friends Like You by Luke Davids. We're just going to get into it. Here we go.
I love it when we sit up talking with a box of chocolates and a bottle of wine. I trust you with anything that's weighing on my mind. You pick me up when he's let me down, and I thank God that you're around. Remember when I thought he was cheating? You called me insane. Well, girl, he's cheating, and I know who's to blame. It ain't that pretty little thing next door who's always eating something fixed, or the waitress at the diner. Of you, help me see the light of that picture of you
right, Hope. A couple things I'm hearing. Overall, it sounds really solid. So far, it's a really good mix. I'm really digging it. The main thing that's bothering me is that kick sample. Okay, it's very loud and it's very evident that it's a sample. And now I know in pop country or whatever you want to call this genre, I know that's kind of like a thing. I know that's kind of a sound, and a lot of mixers do like to fully augment their kick drums with with samples or fully replace them or whatever. But for me, it's very obvious that it's not a real kick. So what I would tend to do on this is, depending on whatever trigger software you're using, I would just kind of maybe blend in some of the acoustic kick sound. It sounds like everything was recorded well, so I would imagine that the kick would be there. But the other thing is that it's just the thing that kind of gives it away is it's very attack heavy. So I could really hear that click and that attack on the kick. And it's just, for me, I can just be like, okay, that's a sample. And I think you can get a really good drum sound on here without having to go like 100% wet on the sample. I understand that's just a taste thing. So you can do whatever you like, but I would just pull that down a little bit. It's a little loud. It's a little dominant. Other thing out wide is that some of the guitars to me sound just a little bit muddy. They just kind of sound like noise as opposed to defined individual instruments. So maybe a little bit of subtractive EQ on the low end, getting rid of some of that mud, using your high pass filter to your advantage. Let's keep going here.
You're laying on here mine. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and this photograph ain't lying. Spare us both, just shut your mouth. You got a devil tongue, and the truth is out. No, it ain't that sexy little backup singer in his buddy's cover band, or the cutie at the corner who's looking for a man. It ain't his ex that called last night. I know you help me see the light of that picture of you on his phone, wearing nothing but your tattoo.
On those background vocals that come in, would love to hear a little bit more of them. So you could pull them up a couple dB. They also sound a little bit muffled, a little bit buried. Again, you can clean those up with some subtractive EQ towards the bottom. Maybe a high shelf on top to brighten them up a little bit. Right on, really good mix. On the end right there, I would do a little fade out there because I could sort of hear some of the things trailing off. I don't know if that is your master or your mix, but it's really hot. I had to pull, a lot of these mixes are really hot. Had to pull a lot of these down, as you can see from the waveforms. I mean, we're really killing it, guys. Dynamics are, I'm a big fan of dynamics, right? You sort of take the peaks of the waveforms, okay, and sort of look at the loudest moments and the quietest moments, and dynamism is good. That's something that I think is super important. If we look here, it sounds pretty compressed, right? There's not a whole lot of room to go. Although I do like how you automated. I could tell that when the choruses came in, they got a little bit louder, which I love. That I always advocate really. really automating your stuff to come down and to come up to sort of, it's almost like you're acting as a composer, and you're directing your your mix. I don't know if that makes sense, but I always think of like I'm sort of leading an orchestra as I'm mixing. So for me, it's very much EQ, compression, doing all that stuff, and then automation in the second stage. But I dig that, okay? But a couple things though, like I said, the kick drum was bothering me a little bit. It's very clicky. Wasn't getting a whole lot of low end on it. Just it shouted sample the whole way through. A little bit more low end would have been great on that. That could get pulled down. And the other thing was that I felt like the lead vocal was pretty compressed, pretty heavily. She had a great voice. It was recorded well. When things get over compressed, they can actually sound smaller. So instead of being like, all right, here's my floor and here's my ceiling, it kind of gets here. So, when she sings quieter, it doesn't get any lower than that. And when she sings louder, it doesn't get any louder than that. Now, again, that might be a taste thing. You might love the way that sounds. But for me, it was just a little bit over compressed. So, but I'm not trying to beat you up or anything on that. I thought that was a really, really solid mix and I really dug it. Definitely a good representation, of that pop country thing. And, great job. Wasn't too much in that. The biggest thing that bothered me was the kick drum. That was really it. So easy fix for that. Good job, Pope. Keep up the great work. Cool. We're going to keep rolling on here. We have Liam Hammers. This is his revision from the song It Burns by his band Project 64. And we've already reviewed this or heard it, but I'm excited to hear what he's done to make some tweaks. And we will check it out. Kind of a long tune. Got a couple long songs here. This one's about 5.5. Wow, 2 8-minute songs. Anyway, so let's hear what's going on with. Let's get this to the beginning. It Burns by Project 64, mixed by Liam Hammer. Here we go. All right, Liam, I'm remembering this song now from the first time you had it in, and I think one of the comments I had made was that I think I remember the song being very bright, just overall very bright, and a bit harsh sounding. So far, the acoustic guitar sounds a little tinny to me. It sounds to me like you maybe recorded it by plugging into your acoustic electric, and for me that's one of my least favorite sounds on the planet. It's very easy to mic an acoustic. I know this is your band, and I know that you have the ability to do that. I mean, even it's not really about having good mics or mic pre's. I've heard amazing acoustics recorded with a 57 and a stock pre on the interface, and they can absolutely do a job. Basically, what you get with that is you just get an acoustic guitar that's going to sound a lot more real, and I think that's going to translate a lot more to people who are listening. Because when I hear a guitar tone like that, I'm just like, it doesn't really sound like an electric guitar, because it's not, but also it doesn't really sound like an acoustic guitar. It's not a flattering thing. So, and then when you slap all that reverb on it and stuff, it just sort of almost enhances that tinniness. I don't know. I'm thinking that we got some band area kicking in over here where the waveform gets bigger. So let's see how it plays out with the rest of the tune. The vocal sounds pretty buried right here. I would definitely pull it up or take some of the wetness off of it to move it a bit forward in the mix, okay? Okay, a couple things going on balance-wise, volume-wise. There is a guitar on the left with some tremolo coming in. That's a bit loud. It's sort of drowning out a lot of other things. The rhythm acoustics that are coming in that are strumming as opposed to picking out that riff, they're also very loud, and they are also on the bright side, on the tinny side of things. I'm trying to figure out a way to show you some of these frequencies that I'm hearing, where the guitars are sort of getting a little bit bright and a little bit, I don't want to say they sound harsh, because I don't think they sound harsh, but they're just very bright and sort of anemic sounding. So around 3K, I'm hearing a lot of that super bright, very thin sounding guitar. Now, it's a hard thing to mix when guitars get like that, because if they're recorded and they sound bright inherently from, say, recording into a pickup, it becomes a tough thing to mix, because if you want to sort of cut some of that, it's gonna dull out the guitar in a weird way. Like if I start cutting, in what I call, the treble or the presence areas, 2K to 6K, 7K, it's gonna dull it out. But if you boost that, it's gonna make it sound harsh. So it's sort of like a catch-22, because you can't really cut it and you can't really boost it, which makes it so crucial for getting things as close as possible to, as you can when you're recording. It's mixing it can only get you so far when certain instruments or certain things sound, sound how they do. It's sort of that what you kind of put in is what you get out. Okay. So, just remember that. But this is a good thing for you, Liam, because this is your band. You are able to go back and, kind of replay it. And that's a part of the process too, is not just the mixing, but, also learning how to sort of get sounds from the start as opposed to get sounds during the mix process. So, just those couple of guitar parts, like I said, are just some volume issues going on. And then the second vocal that was coming in, that kind of feels like it's on the left side of the stereo image here. It was weird because it sounded a little bit louder than the lead vocal kind of coming up the middle here. So let's keep going. love the way that the string sound, the sort of the choice of tone, the patch or the pad that you're using from the library. Tonally, they sound great. They're just a little bit loud here. You could pull those down, especially with the guitar solo. They were definitely competing volume-wise with the guitar solo. So in that part of the song, I always say this, right? The vocal, if there's a vocal, that's the most important part of the mix. That always needs to be the loudest thing, and then whatever's playing the lead part behind that. So if there's no vocal and it's a guitar solo, then the guitar solo becomes the most important part of the mix for me. There I could have just used a little bit more guitar, maybe a little bit more compression on it because it was dirty. A little less compression, more compression. Guys, I'm so shot and exhausted after this week, so forgive me if I'm fumbling my way through this episode. It has been wild. Really, really need some sleep. Sorry, thinking out loud. But I meant to say less compression, because when you have a dirty guitar sound, right, when you're distorting your guitar, that the guitar's inherently compressing, and you're sort of controlling the volume of your guitar there. So if you reduce that a little bit, you're going to get a little bit more volume through the guitar coming up the middle, and then the strings on the sides, if you bring those down just a pinch there, I'd be riding the string section the whole way through. Like, I would send all your strings to a string bus and then have your fader set up. I would set it up for like a touch automation, and I would just ride that the whole time. Whether you have a control surface, sometimes I use the PreSonus fader port. I think everybody can afford one. They're like $100. You can get them used for like $75, and they're great. Or you can just grab your mouse and set up a fader and then just do your automation rides there. Again, think of it as a performance. Listen, do I want more strings, less strings here? And sort of you're moving stuff around, to make way for the important thing, like the lead vocal, like the guitar solo. Anyway, so far so good. I definitely think it's a lot less harsh, and sort of crispy sounding than the last mix you had. So really good job there. I'm definitely hearing some of the improvements and stuff. So let's keep listening. Cool. I would definitely recommend trying to draw a little bit of your fade out at the end a little bit longer. It seems like it just kind of cut off there a little abruptly, but easily rectified. Way better job, Liam. I'm definitely hearing some of the improvements that you made over the last mix. Just a couple more comments on the guitars. Part of that brightness that's going on is also from the pick attack on the strings, okay? So that's sort of coming through, quite heavily, and it's just adding to that brightness. One thing that I like to do a way that I can address that, if I don't have the choice to go back and re-record, I use a de-esser on some guitars sometimes, because you're sort of taking that same frequency range that you would sort of treat with a de-esser, and what I like about it is it just kind of compresses down those frequencies. You can also use a multi-band compressor there to sort of go in and dial in and find where it sounds really bright and picky, and you can sort of compress it and push it down a little bit. The only other thing that I heard was that on the, I thought the vocals were a lot less sibilant this time around, which is great. But when there was quieter parts for the vocals did still have some sibilance to them. When some of the louder parts and more of the music in the band came in, it wasn't as noticeable. So just my observation there. You're definitely going in the right direction, though. I still think you could work on it a little bit. I think you can go back and re-record some of those things, especially the guitar. Like, it's super easy. Everyone's got a mic, If you gig, you can take a 58 and put it in front of your guitar too. It's like, I just think that there's, it's pretty easy to record an acoustic. Mono miking is fine. I don't think in a song like this you need a stereo miking situation, so doesn't have to be overthought in any way. It's very easy to throw a microphone up and to get the acoustic done that way. That's just my opinion, of course, and I hope that helps you for what it's worth. So again, good job, Liam. You're improving. Keep going. Keep tweaking, and much better than the last one. So thank you for that. All right, next up, we've got Paul Perkes, and this one's kind of cool, kind of a different vibe here. This is more of an electronic type song with some cool synths and stuff like that. And the song is called Sustain, and this is by Perk Sound Labs, and of course, it's mixed by Paul Perkes. So, without further ado, let's just jump right in and check this out. One thing I just want to make an observation of before I start this is that I'm looking at the waveform here, and what I typically do is I try and play all the music at the same volume. I use the K system over here. You can see I have it at K14, and I try and get the RMS of the song to kind of hover around 0. Now, for example, if I click on the tune here and I open the trim tab, I'm just trimming these down a little bit because all the stuff I get is always super hot. I know some of you guys are taking stuff from stuff that you've already gone ahead and mastered, and you're sending the mixes over, and that's cool. But some of it is pretty hot. So I'm looking at this right here, and it's kind of bricked out. You guys know what I mean by bricked out, right? If you look at the waveform, I mean, it's just a solid brick. I haven't increased the waveform size. I haven't decreased it. All I did was drag and drop these into the Pro Tools session. So I'm just kind of looking at this over here, and if I was to raise this to the normal volume, actually I had this down a little bit, but my guess is that you might be clipping a little bit here. So guys, just remember, you can always make stuff louder. You can't always make things quieter. Again, that's why gain staging is so important when you mix. Leaving yourself plenty of headroom is imperative, especially if it's going to be going off to mastering somewhere. And I mean, really, there's no reason for a mix to be any louder, than negative 15 RMS. In my opinion, I know a lot of people like to keep it around negative 18 RMS. That is just how I see things. I see some guys who are really, really big name mixers who mix hot. Their meters are absolutely pegged. And, that works. But the main thing we want to remember audibly is that if we're clipping, the channel inside the DAW, or if we're clipping our converters and we can audibly hear that, that's a problem, right? It's hard to go back and sort of rectify that. So you can always make things louder. You can't always make things quieter. Just keep that in mind. Okay, here we go. Sustain by Perk Sound Labs. Help if I went to the beginning. Again, sustain from the beginning. Yeah, see, I can already tell this is going to be super loud. If I go to a loud part over here, and if I make this the same volume that I received this as, let's see how loud it is. Sounds pretty crispy. I know part of that's the synth, but looks like we're clipping the trim tool here, so that's something we're going to keep in mind as we listen to this. In the louder parts, I'm just going to be kind of flipping back and forth between the trim tool for the volume that I want to listen at to make everything uniform versus the volume it actually is. All right, let's go back to the beginning here. even right there, that's kind of hard for me to tell. I'm not sure if you're actually clipping out these peaks or if that's the sound of the synth, if it's actually sort of like a distorted, a clipped, a purposely clipped, sine wave or a triangle wave or something like that. Alright, so I want to check it out. I want to pull the volume back up and I want to see how the meter looks in terms of volume. All right, so definitely clipping here. If I take the limiter off, I had a limiter on the master bus just cause if I bypass it, let's just see, because the channel's definitely clipping. All right, so as you can see from all the meters kind of going red now that I took the limiter off, right, we got some clipping going on, excuse me, which sort of makes it hard to listen for things objectively when things kind of sound crunchy on the top. So I'll do my best to listen to some other stuff, but if you want to maybe readdress this, Paul, pull your levels down, make sure your gain staging is good and you've got lots of headroom on here. It's important, especially for electronic music where, you're pushing things like multiple synths together, pads that already sort of, might have a driven sound to them, where some of the virtual instruments will actually purposely clip, the sine waves and stuff like that to get that sound. It's just hard for me to tell in here if that's an intentional thing or if that's actually due to clipping the mix bus or clipping your converter. So like I said, I'll do my best to listen to everything else and just see how everything's hanging out, but it does make it a little bit tough. I'll pull the level back down so that way we won't necessarily have to deal with all the stuff on the channel clipping. If I pull this down a few dB, it'll probably go away. Just a personal taste thing. I don't know if you kind of want that kick to be really subdued like that, but it'd be really fun if that was a little bit bigger sounding. It was kind of hitting a little bit harder. Again, I'm hands up in the air. I'm not a like an EDM guy or an EDM guru or anything like that. That's one of the genres that I don't work in a lot. So it's not my forte. It's not my strong suit. Self-admitted, but so far, I dig. I like all the way that the synths are playing together. I can hear them all clearly. But right there, I don't know if that's your intention or not. So if you want to throw a comment down below and let me know what's up, Paul, that would be super cool. seeing the correlation. Man, you don't realize how awesome sleep is until you don't get any. The correlation meter up top here is it's heading left, which I believe means that you've got some phase issues going on. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. But I know this is definitely supposed to be towards the right-hand side, over towards the +1. I'm going to have to check on that and get back to you. But I think that means something squirrely's going on. So like, this is one of those sections where it's just really hard to tell what's going on because stuff's sounding very crunchy to me. And I don't know if that is an intentional thing you're doing or if it's due to the fact that the track is clipping here. It's pretty hard for me to say. I hear a lot of that going on. I just don't know specifically where, that's an intentional move or not. As I've said before, would love for you to resend this over. Make sure your gain is at send it over to me, -15 RMS. I can always make it louder, or lower than that, or just make sure you got plenty of headroom going on, okay? Because it's just one of those things that it is almost impossible for me to objectively listen to. Let's keep going here. Yeah, see, just again, it's just I have no idea if you want it to sound that that gritty or not. All right, cool. So really digging the way that this sounds. Again, I I wanted to just kind of play it out, let everybody be able to hear this. At the lower volumes, like in sort of these breakdown parts, I think it sounds good. I can hear everything together, sort of. They're sitting in their own place, okay? Like, for example, over here. And when those bass stabs or those peaks come in, I can hear them because I know that they're not sort of maxing out the volume range there. You can just sort of see where they're at. So I can be a little bit more objective there. But, I just don't want to, go in and just, start saying things because I can't make an accurate sort of, judgment on stuff. And, but listen, everything was sounding cool. All right. Like I said before, I'm by no means an EDM expert, so I'm not sure what synths or what. And, if something's like an ARP or a Juno or this or that. All I can say about stuff like this is if I'm hearing things and, for example, if something's too bright, if something's too muddy, boxy, an EQ area is problematic, or if there's too much compression, or if things are squished. But I'm not hearing any of that, okay? So everything was sounding cool, just clipping the top makes it difficult. So want to say thank you, Paul. But listen, this is for me, it's a great, kind of a great lesson and a great experience where it's like, now you're gonna, I guarantee you're gonna be much more cognizant of sending things out and make sure that you're constantly metering your mix and your levels and make sure your gain staging is good and correct. Something that I know that's difficult about working with MIDI and working with virtual instruments is that a lot of the just the normal presets for different MIDI patches or different virtual instrument libraries is that they're always really hot. So for example, if you pull up something from Native Instruments or something from Arturia or whatever, I mean, all these things sound great. It's just that they're always inherently very loud. And then I find if I'm using them in my mixes or my songs, productions, whatever, I will have to pull the master volume down quite a bit on them to make sure that I have that headroom there, if I'm adding something or if I'm playing a part. So I always keep an eye on that. So anyway, for what it's worth, I hope that helps you out in some way, Paul. Please resend that. No worries. We'll get you on. We'll throw it on again and we'll check it out. Or if you want, I can take a listen to it and shoot you an email back about something or whatever. Very cool. All right, last up, we've got 875 by the band C16, mixed by Antonio Mosqueda. This one down here. So without further ado, let's pull open the trim tool and let's check this guy out. Here we go. Okay, Antonio, right away, the lead vocal for me is very buried, but it's very muddy sounding and it's very muffled. It's kind of difficult to hear what the vocalist is singing, but it's not just so much the listening to it, it's just that you can just tell there's sort of like this muffled sound over it. Son ciclos definidos y disímiles, pero de apariencia así. I can also hear that it's sounding a bit cardboardy and boxy. For me, mud and boxiness are sort of two different areas that I look for in a vocal. But it also sounds like some of your effect return is, it's kind of having a little bit of buildup on it. I say this all the time. Make sure you EQ your effects. After them, before, whatever you want to do. But if you're hearing that it is in some way sort of smudging your vocal or muddying something up, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, if it's making it too bright, You have to address it. It's going to be an issue, especially if you're using a bunch of different effects. So, sometimes you don't need any low end under reverb. Sometimes you get a little bit too much high end under reverb where it starts to sound sibilant and it starts to sound harsh. So that's what I'm hearing on the vocal right now. The music sounded very cool though. Let's keep going.
Barreras sin atravesar, ni cadenas para amarrar, o celdas para encerrar. Tu poder me ha dado libertad. Tu poder me ha dado libertad.
This is awesome. This kind of reminds me of like a Latin Rush or something like that. Kind of got that proggy thing going on. Very cool with the synth coming in. Was for me, I'd pull it down a dB or two, especially with the aggressiveness of that. What else is kind of interesting is that this song almost has like a live feel to it. It almost it sounds a little on the live side, but it feels a little like that too. Antonio, I would love to know some of the maybe the recording specs on this, if you had anything to do with the recording, or if this was just kind of given to you, by a client or something like that. Just interesting to point out. Again, the music sounds very cool. I'm just having a tough time getting past that vocal being so muddy and so buried in there and muffled, being boxy. The good news is that it's quite fixable. I've showed a bunch of times how I sort of go about seeking and pulling those things out. One of the tutorials I did was called, I forget what it was called now. 3 subtractive moves to EQ your lead vocal with, or something like that. I'll have to put a link in the description box below. I'll have to look at it. I forget off the top of my head. But basically what I do is I go through and I talk about how I like to assess and analyze a vocal, and sort of go through and do some EQ moves that I find helpful, especially with the low, the low mids and the muddy stuff. You can come in and I often find something around here or here. So 150, 200, 250 is where a lot of that mud is going to live. And then some of the boxier stuff I find can get up towards like your 450, 500, 550. So, they're kind of in the low mids and in the mids, but they are kind of 2 different spots that I like to look at and I like to address. Anyway, let's keep cruising here. Like how the drums, they've got a very live sound and a live feel to them. So I'm assuming that we're getting quite a bit of room in the mics there. But they sound good. I can hear everything. Sounds like a kick drum, sounds like a snare drum. Toms are good. I'm not getting blown away by the cymbals or anything like that. So far so good. The only thing that was a little weird there was that everything else kind of dropped out quite a bit volume-wise. I'm assuming you did that because it was almost like a drum solo, so you wanted to pull everything down a bit. I thought it would have been cool if you kept it up, so when the stabs and the accents came in, it was at the same level, but different strokes. All right, so with the, by the way, it's really cool bringing in the acoustics and the classical nylon. I dig that a lot. One thing that I was hearing with the classical or the nylon string, whatever you want to call it, is it was sort of taking on some of that vocal quality that I was hearing, where a little bit of mud at the bottom, a little bit of sort of that, that murkiness, that buildup. I would definitely try and carve some of the bottom out on that, and I would try and add a little sparkle and a little bit of shine to the top end, just to kind of make it pop.
Solo creo en él, derrotó a la muerte y al pecado. Solo creo en él, me entregó.
I feel like this whole part is just a little bit muddy. That's kind of the constant theme that I'm having with this. Whereas Liam's mix was on the bright side of things. Aspects of this are getting a bit muddy. I wonder if I can pull some of that out. Let's see how it will take. So a lot of 200 in here. Can definitely get rid of some. See, there's a couple things. The reason that 200 sounds really muddy here is because the fundamental of the nylon string guitar is sort of hitting around 200, and that's also where a lot of the vocals living. So those two things are fighting for 200 basically. There's a lot of buildup there, and that's why it sort of sounds the way it does. I'm not sure that removing 200 would necessarily sound good. I think, in my opinion, the nylon guitar fundamental is going to want to live there, because the fundamental note of an instrument is right. That's like the lowest entry point, sort of where you hit something, right? And that's whether it's a kick drum fundamental, a bass fundamental, that's going to sort of be your initial transient, where. So check it out. Let me just move back a pinch here. So listen to when you hear the sort of like the bass note of the nylon guitar, and look at the graph here and just watch it poke up at 200. It's it's in that ballpark. It might be like 180 for one note, and then it might go to something else for another. But it's definitely there. So for me, the guitar kind of wants to sit there, and you could definitely carve out some of the vocal in that spot, since the vocal is sounding muddy anyway. So I would definitely pull the high pass up, pull out some of the 200 for the vocal, and then that way the guitar is going to have a place to live. It cleans your vocal up, and then everything sort of kind of hangs out and lives in a good spot.
Me entregó la tristeza y la alegría. Solo creo en él, me enseñó.
Also getting a bit of clipping here going on, which is interesting because I've pulled this down about 5 dB, so I thought it would probably be okay anyway. But we sort of clipped out the left side, and my guess on that would be that there's a lot of bass buildup going on between the vocal, the guitars. excuse me, things like that. So, definitely make sure you're using your high pass filter. Okay. Very important. I would say put a high pass on everything. Don't just worry about high passing, everything but the kick and bass. I put a high pass filter on my mix bus. I put a high pass filter on kick drums, bass, everything. Make sure everything, who needs 20 hertz? No one ever goes, man, I need more 20 or I need more 30. It just doesn't happen. And then we avoid situations like this. Low frequencies stimulate things and have a lot more impact on the sonic landscape. It'll send compressors into compression way fast. That's why there's, side chains and stuff like that on compressors. So let's just be conscious of that. I wonder how loud this is going to get if I push this up, but we will find out.
La belleza de una flor y el candor que revuelve el corazón de los niños. Solo creo en él, es pan de vida y amor. Solo creo en él. Solo creo en él. Solo creo en él. Solo creo en ti.
Getting a lot of build up around 600, so the mid range and the low end on here just needs a lot of work.
Solo creo en ti.
Getting a lot of build up around 330 as well. Again, it's going to be impossible to really make this sound good with just one EQ on the mix bus. So it's going to need a lot of surgery, so to speak. Plus, we're clipping out again. So, guys, I can't stress this enough. We can always make things louder. We can't make things quieter all the time. There's not always a situation that sort of lends itself to that. So, be conscious of headroom. Be conscious of gain staging. It's louder doesn't equate to better. Volume knobs are on stereos and on interfaces and on whatever for a reason. Because if you want to make it louder, boom, turn the volume knob up. And, we avoid all stuff like this. I don't like seeing, things clipping. I don't like to hear converters clipping. I don't like any of that stuff. And, in a situation like this, it makes it really, really tough to get objective with things, one super progressive journey in the, what was the band's name? In the vision of C16. Very cool. All right, so overall, Antonio, really cool tune. Love the progressive nature of it. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of like the, like the Latin Rush. It's, I love how it kind of goes on this journey. It's a long tune and it takes you through all these, really fun twists and turns. And for that, it is, super adventurous. And I think that's the first time we've had something like that on here. But quite a bit of work to do in the mids and the low mids, even in the low end with some rumbly buildup. Okay, a little bit of work to do. Biggest problem I had, vocals. Came in, were muddy, muffly, kind of had that boxy thing going on too. Just made it tough to kind of hear what was what. I feel like everything sort of is a trickle down from the vocal. So if you don't really have your vocal nailed, everything's going to sort of suffer from it. But I like the way the drums sounded. I thought the drums sounded quite a bit natural. But even back here, when you had some of those snare accents and the rolls playing, I was hearing some low mid build up again. So to me, what it sounds like, Antonio, is it sounds to me like you've maybe not dialed in or tailored your ear yet to, the low ends to the low mids of things, just hearing a lot of that build up through and through. And it's definitely something that you have to sort of, learn and train to hear. It took forever doing that. I know I've probably told this story on here before, but way back in the day when I started my audio journey or mixing or whatever, one of my buddies got married and he was like, man, I want to write and record a song for my mom and surprise her, for the first dance at his wedding with him and his mom. And it was really sweet and it was a really cool tune. And, but that was kind of before I was at a certain point in my audio path and before I was really hip on, using high pass filters and stuff like that to sort of rein in my low end to make it sound tight yet, yet punchy, and to go in and do a lot of surgical cuts on stuff. Anyway, point being is, so it's a big DJ. He's got with this huge system, subs and all this stuff. So they put it in and I'm all excited, this is like a long time ago and I'm all pumped up, and then they hit play and it comes in and all I hear is just like the subs start going nuts and the low end is just a giant mess, and it sounded terrible. It sounded great in my room, but the translation wasn't there. So, but that was great for me. I was super embarrassed at the time. And I was just, oh my God, that sounded terrible. And people were like, no, man, it was cool. And I was like, no, it wasn't. But I learned a ton from that because it said to me a couple things. Number one, mix translation is imperative. If you can't take your mix and put it in another system, go put it in your car, go put it in your family room on your stereo, listen to it on your phone, do whatever. If it doesn't translate, it doesn't matter how good it sounds in your mix position in your studio. And the second thing is that it's just like it's one of those things that you sort of have to roll with, and it's time. It's the 10,000 hour rule is a very real thing, and you have to put the time in. You have to be able to hear these things, but you can cheat and you can get better quickly. I say this a lot. Use reference mixes. If you have a reference mix in your session, Antonio, and you're doing this, or for that matter, for you, Liam. And two different sides of the spectrum, right? Liam, your mix was on the bright side. Antonio, yours is on that sort of on the muddy side of things. And if you're listening to a song, like for example, if you're A-Bing this Antonio against a Rush song, and you're listening to that mix, and you're going back and forth, you're going to hear and you're going to say, you know what? Something in my mix is off, or something in my mix is it doesn't sound like this mix sounds. How do I get it there? How do I make this sound like that? I know it's easier said than done, and that's part of the journey. That's part of the process. But by using reference mixes, you can really, at the very least, be able to sort of tell and to know, listen, my mix is too bright because this mix, this other mix doesn't sound this way, or my mix is too muddy because this other mix doesn't sound this way. So it's sort of like it's a control and it's a gauge for all of you to, just to know that you're on the right path. It's the easiest way to do it, and the more you do it, the better you will get at it. So Please use reference mixes, guys. Okay. I feel bad. I feel like I was rough. A lot of constructive criticism here. But that's okay, right? That's how we get better. That's how we improve. That's kind of getting in our reps, so to speak, in the audio gym. And that's a good thing. That is, you learn through doing. And I know I learn from my mistakes with many things in life. So I'm not trying to beat you guys up again. I'm just sharing what I hear and ways that I know that you could possibly do it better or just implement some of these very simple changes to make in your mixes. So, okay. Again, and guys, listen, I'm sorry. I am just absolutely shattered after, the last week and a half that I've had. And yesterday, going on very, very little sleep. So I felt like I was sounding very unintelligent on here, but I do apologize for that. I just, taken care of. If you guys have gone through that whole thing, or if any of you are parents, you know the whole thing, going through the night, not sleeping many nights in a row. So I wanted to get this up, and for better or for worse, here it is. So apologies again. I promise next week I will have more sleep in me, or at least I'm gonna try. So thank you to Hope, to Liam Hamer, to Paul Perkes, and to Antonio Mosqueda. Thank you guys for all throwing these in. I appreciate it. Paul, like I said, do me a favor, man. Bring your levels down. Make sure you're not clipping anything out. Get your meters up. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the metering on your converters as well. And, that way, bring your volume down. I would love to hear this again without having a lot of the top end sort of clipping out there. Same thing with you, Antonio. You're getting a bit of clipping going on, but I have a feeling it's from a lot of your low end buildup. So I think maybe once you get rid of that low end by using your filters, by using your subtractive EQ, that should help it out. But again, like Liam did, feel free to make revisions and send the same thing back. I would love to hear it, and keep sort of giving the feedback to work with you on it to, get it to where you want it to be. Liam, that wasn't much better, absolutely much better. Still hearing some fundamental brightness and stuff like that in there. And I know this is your band, so you can definitely go back and re-record some of those things like the guitars. But Hope, I thought that was a really solid mix, really dug it. And just that kick drum on there was just a little, I'm being a little nitpicky, but it was good. It was good. All your stuff has been really good. So great job. Again, big thanks to the four of you guys. If you would like a mix on here, if you would like to be on a Mix Critique Monday, shoot me an email, pete@mixbetternow.com. Send me a downloadable WAV file. Your name of the artist, if it's different from yours, and the name of the tune. Okay. And if you have to send me an MP3, that's all right. Again, it's first come, first serve. And it's that easy. Okay. Right now, I think we're actually thinning out a little bit. I'm sort of catching up by doing these 4 a week as opposed to 3. And we are getting there. So as always, guys, I want to say thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed this from me fumbling around and going on no sleep here, would love it if you subscribe to the channel, throw me a thumbs up, and jump on the email list, get your free audio swag bag. Got lots of stuff in there for you. You can click on the link in the description box, and when you get on the email list, I send you my free audio swag bag, free multi-track sessions, mix templates, drum samples, all kinds of good stuff. Stay in the loop as to all the comings and goings on here. Got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And so guys, have an awesome day, okay? Hope you all have an awesome week. If any of you guys are pet owners, pet lovers, if you have a dog or cat or whatever, if you have a goldfish, I don't know, run home right now, go hug your dog, go kiss your cat, whatever you got, because they are awesome. I will leave you all with one of my favorite quotes in the world. Being a dog guy, a dog lover, one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard is be the person your dog thinks you are. So for me, that's spot on. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day. I will catch you guys next time. See ya.